Hey, welcome back to Monday All Weekend. That was on purpose.
And I hit the wrong button. Dang it. I hit the wrong button. And on a night we're going live on Instagram as
On
well for the first
Instagram, yeah.
time.
People are gonna be like, "Wow, so unprofessional."
Look, you guys are joining, whether you're on YouTube, we typically stream on YouTube, but we're also going live on Instagram as well on this fine evening. If you guys are here, we'd love to interact with you in the chat. We're talking about Dune Part 2. Dune Part 2. And just
what?
well, I'm sure part 1 will come up quite a bit.
Oh yeah,
Doing part 2. So Josh was already laughing at us. We should be laughing at him. He's the one not here tonight because he is hoarse. He can't speak.
He's very hoarse.
His voice is gone because he
Yeah.
had a sickness, and so I said, look, do what you want, and he said, I'm going to save the listening ears of the viewers and not attend tonight. So so that's what we're doing. We're talking about Dune Part 2. We're giving a full review, and we hope that everyone joins in on the conversation and has a great time with us because I freaking loved this movie.
Yeah, it is a dedicated Dune review episode. I'm not sure where to start except for perhaps at the beginning.
Well, do you want to see how the world is responding to this?
Yeah, let's go with that.
So the world on Rotten Tomatoes is responding with a 93% for critic score and a 95% for audience score.
Wow.
So when have we seen this recently where people just love a movie so much that it gets that high of score?
I don't know.
From both camps, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's honestly nuts.
We were talking about this beforehand. I was telling you, I felt like I knew when the first movie came out, and people watched it and they were like, "I like it. It's really good, but
it's a little dense.
It's
right?
dense. There's, lots of stuff to try to understand, and then it ends like just as we're kind of getting into the story. And I when the movie ended, I was like, the second movie will be so good. And by the time it comes out, people will have had a chance to watch this movie enough times and understand what this story is, that when the movie comes out, it will be excellent and people will love it.
Yeah. Yeah. But that was from a perspective of knowing how the story plays out. For a lot of us that didn't spoil it for ourselves necessarily, because there's such a long gap, I definitely learned some details.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I kept so much of it a secret to myself that I wanted to. I did, especially talking about it nonstop. It makes me rethink that video we did about how to be like Paul Atreides. He's not really someone to model after, which he kind of brought up in the video. But yeah, okay. So this is a spoiler review. All right.
Yes.
We're gonna be talking about it. So I want everyone to stick around, but I also don't want to ruin it for anybody. So yeah. So what first stood out to you the most? I think for me, the biggest thing was that opening fight shot was amazing. First, the opening shot, that long shot with it wasn't a wide angle, but it was panning around the environment. And it never cut away. That was amazing. It really captured the POV, you might say, of Paul hiding in this little
let me first preface. I before we actually get into the full review, I would like to say I did not enjoy this movie as much as I could have.
Why?
The theater I was in, which was an IMAX theater, it was so loud. The bass was up so loud that I couldn't hear things. It only hurt my ears.
Wait, you couldn't hear things?
Like I couldn't hear the music when they were fighting.
Okay.
I could only hear the bass sounds.
So someone dialed it in wrong.
Like a sword clash would hurt your ears, and I did not enjoy it. And so I wanna mention before we get into it, coming out of the theater, I was a little bit miffed that I did not enjoy it as much as I should have. Um, but yeah, the cinematography opening up, first fight, everything, awesome.
Yeah, yeah, truly, truly amazing. The way that they captured the guys in the floating suits, the Harkonnen guys, right?
Mhm.
How they did that was, they were literally just a single file line of guys
Yeah,
floating up to the top of this little cliffside. It was so awesome, and I
that was
don't know,
very
I
cool.
the audio was dialed in perfectly for me, so
Mhm.
I'm sorry you experienced that. Um, but so the fights obviously were extensive, but not as much as we're used to with war epics. So,
Yeah.
um, especially the end scene fight. So I don't want to skip to the end, but I'm doing it because we talk about fights.
Mm.
A lot of people say that it really. So I heard one complaint that it seemed too easy. Seemed too
Okay.
easy for them to basically kill a lot of the Harkonnen, take their revenge, and then take the emperor captive, essentially what they did.
Mhm.
It was too easy for them, and I know they had the sandworms with them, so that could play a big part in it. But what did you feel? Did you feel like it was too easy, especially at the end battle?
No, so I know that because I've read the book, I kinda understand how it plays out, and it does play out differently. Um, but I think the way everything happens, it does feel quick. Um, but it feels satisfying. It feels
Yeah,
like a decisive victory.
right.
Um, and one that is expertly planned. I know I heard some people complaining that some people die, like, quickly,
Mhm.
maybe too quickly, but, even in the book, people just it's just the end. The only really big, um, like, death, thing is Fade Rotha, and
Right.
he's and they do that well in the movie too.
Yeah. So you bring up Fade Rotha. I kind of want to go through each individual character, and I'm tempted to start with Paul, but
Mm,
let's start with Fade. He's a new face in the story.
yeah.
Austin Butler comes in about honestly a little bit halfway through the story, a little more than halfway through the story,
Mhm.
and incredible, in my opinion, incredible introduction.
Oh, man.
I mean,
One of the coolest I think one of the coolest scenes in this whole movie, one of the most impressive
mhm.
parts of the movie, is everything on Gady Prime. Like,
Which, by the way, that's not black and white, right? That's
it
infrared.
is it?
Yeah, they did an infrared modified camera,
That
and
is
so
so cool looking.
yeah, it
Um,
does more. It does more than just look black and white. It feels as if the life of everything has been completely sucked out of the image.
well,
That's
it's
what it
what it
feels like.
is the, because when they're back in the rooms, there's some color.
Mhm.
But what it feels like is when they walk out into, Gady Prime's sun,
Yeah,
the sun is what is bleaching, just
yeah,
sucking all the color out of everything,
yeah.
and it is awesome, it's intense. I remember sitting there in the theater thinking, "They look like aliens, they don't look human."
Yeah, yeah. It's something so far beyond that was actually Greg Fraser's idea. They were thinking about black and white, and Greg
Mhm,
Fraser, as revolutionary as he is, the director of photography, he's one of the lead guys that launched the volume technology into use, and he's done so many interesting projects, but that was his idea. They were just gonna go with black and white,
mhm,
and he
and
said, "What about infrared?"
I feel like the infrared made it feel otherworldly, which is
Yeah,
what they were going for here with everything on Gady Prime. Uh, the fireworks felt strange.
Strange,
Everything
but
the beauty of the Harkonnen homeworld is everything feels manufactured.
right.
Um, their bodies, even the Fremen say there's so much chemicals in these
Mhm.
Harkonnens that we don't even wanna drink it.
Right,
It's only
right.
useful for, like, pumps and things.
Yeah, for the cooling.
Mhm,
Um, that scene where Fade Rotha's being followed down that long hallway by the Bene Gesserit woman,
mhm,
that now there's a lot of moments where I felt completely entranced by the scope of watching it in IMAX and relatively close to the screen.
yeah,
But that moment, because it was such a dark environment, I lost the corners of the screen, and I freaking felt like I was peering into this huge Harkonnen, palace hallway,
mhm,
and it was dark. All that you could see was the lights from the fireworks streaming throughout from outside. It
yeah,
was truly amazing. It was the most beautiful some of the most beautiful cinematography I have truly ever seen,
yeah,
and it
it's a sci-fi movie.
yeah. Yeah, it's truly a sci-fi movie. If you guys are watching live, go ahead and let us know if you've seen Dune Part 2. I'm curious to get other opinions here on this live, but with Fade Rotha as a character, you know him from the books. Did you feel
Mhm,
like the savagery? Do you feel like the insensitivity, the complete discard for human life, even other Harkonnens?
mhm.
Do you feel like that was satisfying, or did they go
Um,
too hard for what the book describes?
the book doesn't give nearly this much fade, I
Okay.
don't believe.
Nearly this much? I felt like we
Doesn't
coulda had so much more.
I don't think that no, 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 I don't think the book gives nearly this much, fade. They I think it's mostly the fight at the end is what we
Really?
experience from fade. Now I could be misremembering, it's been a long time since I read the book. Uh, but John Mark told me afterwards, he's like, "I'm almost disappointed that Fade's dead because I liked the way that Austin Butler played that character so much."
Yeah, yeah. He did such an interesting job.
And
Um
did you notice his accent felt like he was, emulating Skarsgård?
Mhm. Which he was. He did vocal coaching to emulate them.
That was
So
cool.
he was actually the same vocal coach who did Skarsgård's, work.
Mhm,
So, so yeah, it was very similar. Now, do you think I think it was pretty powerful because you got Raban, right? Um, and how much authority he had and how much power he emanated in the first
mhm,
movie, really only secondary to the Baron himself.
right,
He led the attack on the Atreides family, just destroyed them, and then to see him pale in comparison to Fade, his younger brother, correct?
mhm,
Younger?
yeah,
It was wild. It almost set up Fade. It took his character and elevated it so much higher
mhm,
because of that simple choice to degrade, um, Raban in order
mhm.
to elevate Fade as far as skill, as far as authority, as far as, threat, you
Oh,
know?
I know it's gonna seem like we're jumping back and forth all over the place,
We're on
but,
Fade. We're stuck on Fade.
um well, no, I was gonna mention the part where Raban gets chased away by Fremen.
Oh, yeah. That was
When
so
he
cool.
turns and looks back and there's a Fremen on the ship with him, that made me scared.
Yeah.
I was like, "He escaped."
He can't get away from him.
Mhm. That was awesome.
That was an super awesome moment, you know? So we got our first, let's see. Okay, so Esther, I think it's Esther. For some reason, they're not coming up in our StreamYard chat, but she left a comment. It says, "Hey Joe, hey Wyatt, hey Tim," with a kissy face.
I'm guessing that's Esther.
Yeah, it's Esther. So we got a couple people joining us over on Instagram Live. Thank you
Mhm,
guys for joining us over there. That really appreciate it. We love y'all. Um, with the Baron, okay, there we got a lot more Baron in this film than we did in the
mhm.
first one. So how do you think, obviously it's an incredible performance. It's not too different, but we do get to see a little bit more of his acting, a little bit more of his presence on screen, and a little bit deeper into his character's motivations and how he
Mhm.
processes. How did you think he lined up? Was it kind of predictable? You kind of expected what we saw, or
Yeah, I actually, the Baron sorta took a back seat for me, when it came to, like, uh, uh, especially when Fade comes onto the scene.
intrigue? The Barons just fades into the background,
Uh-huh, and
pun intended.
I know that, like, in the book, he's much more prominent as the villain,
Right.
um, but, yeah, I mean, obviously, Stellan Skarsgård, just
Right up there. Just
awesome,
crushing it.
great. I want to, instead of, like, maybe just going character by
Mhm.
character, um, how did you feel the story, like, act-wise from the beginning with Paul becoming a Fremen? Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about Paul becoming a Fremen.
Okay.
What do you think it just I wanna say that's what mostly the first act
Yeah.
of the movie? Let's talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit.
I think, the first act was very intriguing. I mean,
Mm,
the threat was present, but they were able to get away from it for to just be like, all right, let's get away from the constant threat so that we can build who Paul needs to be to the Fremen. There
mhm.
needs to be a sense of security there, and I think the setup was well. Again, my criticism, the only criticism I have for the film kind of feels like they summarized, because I know
Mhm.
that there's a lot to the book, and even not having read the book, I felt like
Yeah.
this was summarizing a lot. So even that section of the film, I felt like they summarized some of the progress Paul needed to make to get accepted
Mhm.
by the Fremen. They summarized the love story between him and Shawnee, and they kind of just got to the important moments.
I feel it partially they did, but I also think that they did it very well. There was so much in there that was good, like the way that establishing the way that the people see him,
Mhm.
establishing that the way that the different elements in the, Fremen culture and people see him. Um
It just felt so different. Like the Fremen for with Paul at the first act of this film felt so
Mhm.
different than the Fremen that entered the court, the grand meeting room with
Yeah.
Leto Atreides, and they were, trying to show some respect. It was such a different version of what's his name? His name's slipping my
Stilgar?
Stilgar. Such a different version and different vibe as who the Fremen are and how they
Mhm.
act. They almost felt slightly more puppy-like, a little bit less like hardened people and more like,
Yeah,
we're kind, sweet people. We joke around a lot. You know what I mean?
so I'm glad that they humanized them a bit and made them, uh, maybe not so hardened,
Mhm.
because, in the book, they're hard.
Right.
They're hard people.
That's what I got from the first movie.
The, I like that they sort of maybe tone it back a little bit to make them people, relatable people. They
Yeah.
are people who are surviving in a hell world, but they are people. Um,
Yes.
the important things for me in that bit are his first his getting his name, um, Muad'Dib.
Muad'Dib. Yeah.
Yeah. Muad'Dib is important, and John Mark pointed out, doesn't feel like it's part of the Bene Gesserit prophecies.
Okay.
It feels and also doesn't it almost feels like something outside of that fate.
Right.
Something he chose that fits into him being the Lisan al-Gaib.
Okay.
Uh,
So go into that a little bit more. So you're saying, like, even though he seems to be on this path that he doesn't have control over,
right.
he
He
makes
doesn't make a
a
choice.
he does make a choice, and at the same time, he pulls back in what he can, which
Well,
is
it's like they set up all of these prophecies and everything, um, and he fulfills them because of his training,
Mhm,
not necessarily because of mysticism, but
mhm,
because of his training. However, Muad'Dib is the name of the mouse, but
mhm,
it's also the one who points the way,
mhm.
right, in their stars.
Yeah.
And that fits almost too perfectly with his destiny. But there's no way that could have been planned that he would have chosen the name Paul Muad'Dib.
Why do you think he in the movie, he did choose it,
Yeah, because he liked the mouse.
but in the film, he also acts like he can't remember the name of it.
Um,
Remember, he says, what do you call the mouse?" But literally
yeah,
in the first movie, he's studying and there's,
right.
like, a mouse there.
Yeah, but that's part of it. He
Mhm,
likes it. He's seen it before. He likes the mouse.
mhm.
He likes the way that it survives in the desert. Um, and it's something that he chooses that doesn't feel like it's part of the prophecy, but is still somehow
There. It fits into it.
it still somehow fits into the prophecy.
Right.
That and the part where it's that whole part I think is important because it's like he's happy.
Mhm.
He holds the ring, he looks at his father's ring, and he says, "I found my way."
Right.
And if you watch the first movie in his conversation with, Leto, Leto says, you know, "Perhaps you'll find your way." And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's a really, really great moment, and then he puts the ring away,
Mhm.
uh, and he's happy, which makes the rest of the movie really tragic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good way to put it. Now, this idea of when do you think it was the turn? Do you think it was the turn for Paul when he decided to go south? Do you think it was the turn when he expanded his mind? Do you think it's the turn happens when Gurney Halleck shows up and all of a sudden starts egging him on and with the warheads and everything? When do
Mm.
you think this turn for Paul really happens in this movie? Because there's a series of events that take place. When, in your opinion, when do you think it happens?
It's I think it's when he starts to see that he can't protect Chani,
Mhm.
when when the nukes are put into play, right? His visions start becoming ones of her fate,
Right.
right? Um, all the rest is like if I go south, there's going to be death. But then once Chani's fate is in danger and he can't see what will happen,
Right.
but he knows that if he opens his mind, he'll be able to see the path.
And control,
And
right?
yeah, and be able to steer the events rather than just reacting to them.
Right. And steer the events as according to the foresight and having a clear foresight to move
Mhm.
through the events with certainty in some fashion.
Yeah.
Um and it is interesting that that also plays into why it seems like it's so easy at the end because, well, for one, he brought up the fact that in so many futures, hey, their enemies destroy them or are victorious
Mhm.
over them,
Yeah.
but there is a narrow way, right? And
Right.
a narrow way through, and in some ways they, because he expanded his mind, they can execute it almost perfectly because of his abilities.
Mhm.
Um,
And that's assuming that they do execute it perfectly because, some of his plans don't go exactly as he would like. In the book, I'm pretty sure he says that there's a narrow way through.
yeah.
He says that all the way through the final battle is he almost has this path overlaid
Mm,
on everything he's seeing and doing, and just trying to make sure to stay within that path because the narrow path is not it, at least in the books, it is not winning in this battle.
mhm.
The narrow path is avoiding the the holy war, the jihad
Right.
of the galaxy, right? And so every step he is making is to avoid that. Um, and by the end of this movie, there's a response from the other lords,
Yeah.
and they're like, "All right, well, we're gonna have to go fight them." And it's almost implied that like that narrow path, they didn't make it through, if that's the path he was looking at.
Mhm. Um, what's up, Nikita? Glad you're joining us. So we're just going through details of Dune. Josh is gone this week because
Mm,
he has a hoarse voice. A horse, like he can't speak very well. He
yeah.
caught a virus and it took his voice from him, and he's been.
I like that first comment.
Yeah. If this movie makes 1 billion, we might see more sci-fi books being adapted in the next decade. I think you're right. I think we've talked about this on the podcast about we're kind of moving into an interesting takes on sci-fi.
Mhm.
So we don't just want general sci-fi. We don't just want multiverse. We don't just want, you know what I mean? We don't just want
Yeah.
Marvel.
Uh, somebody said, um somebody said that Dune feels like sci-fi that's not like Star Wars. They said it and, and you know what I mean. Who was it? I don't it was on, one of, the Critical Drinkers podcast, but he said, like a princess and a guy like me, that
Mhm.
kind of sci-fi, that kind of
Right.
that's fantasy. That's high fantasy,
Sure.
that looks like sci-fi with a sci-fi veneer,
Mhm.
which I love personally.
You like
But
that genre.
I also love high concept sci-fi like this. I mean, it's so high concept.
Yeah.
There's
Nick
It's so high concept, there's no robots,
yeah.
and I'm
Not
so
because they
happy.
not because they can't have them. It's
Yeah.
because
Well,
they choose not to.
it's because, um John Mark and I were talking about this. It's like in Star Wars, there's always this question of are the robots maybe sentient,
Oh,
right?
right. Right, right,
Whereas
right.
in Dune, it's like, yes, robots are sentient and we killed them for it.
Yeah,
Uh
yeah. And
they
that all happened
enslaved
off
hum
screen.
oh man, like 10,000 years before.
Right.
There was a
Nikita,
there was
have
like 10,000 years where it was just normal sci-fi
right.
in the Dune universe
Right,
with
like Star
robots.
Wars stuff. Nikita, have you seen Dune Part 2? Let us know. Um, we are spoiling stuff here. I want you to stick around, but
Mhm.
goodness gracious. Um,
Yes, we are really spoiling stuff.
so getting into Princess Irulan, do you real quick. The Godfather director also has original magnum opus and possible Swain song because he's in the 80s. Completely self-funded by Adam Driver. Kind of nervous about it. Are we talking about? We talk about Ferrari?
I don't think so.
Wait, the Godfather director? Who directed The Godfather? What was his name?
Coppola?
Yeah, Coppola. He's dead, right?
I don't know.
Sorry, I'm not. I'm not trying to. Let's see. Oh, uh, Swain like Birdman.
Swan.
Swan like Birdman. Okay, gotcha. Um, no upcoming Coppola movie. Yeah, if he's gone. But have you seen Dune Part 2? He's not dead yet? I don't know. Have you seen Dune Part
She
2?
said no.
You no,
She
did
said,
she?
"No, I am broke."
When did she say it? Oh,
You highlighted it, dude.
sorry. Uh, well, all right. When are you planning on seeing it? Let us know. So,
Um,
Princess Irulan, I'd like to discuss Florence Pugh some.
yeah, she was there.
Okay. Do you think they needed more of her, or do you
Nah,
think she was just fine the way it was?
good enough.
Good enough,
Good enough.
but not great.
I didn't feel like she did just enough to where she didn't feel, like, intrusive, like, the character didn't feel intrusive, and, uh but not so much that it felt like she was, like, a star of the movie.
Right,
She's an integral part of the story, um, and integral to what happens later as well, but
right.
definitely not. I'm perfectly happy with the amount that she's in this movie.
Um, I thought she did pretty well. Her presence on screen, and I don't really have a lot of context for Princess Irulan, but if I'm gonna say
Mhm,
the daughter of an emperor, yeah, a bit jaded, highly intelligent, doesn't
mhm.
really know what to do with herself. She has a lot of thoughts, opinions, and but ultimately
Yeah.
not the control that
Mhm.
she wants. And so, yeah, a bit jaded, a bit observant, I would say, of events that play out. And I thought that that was executed very well by Florence Pugh. I don't if they get to Dune Messiah, obviously she'll play a bigger role in it, but
Yeah.
I I kind of like this trend that we're seeing with Dune where we introduce a character in a movie, but we really
Mhm.
expand on them in the next one. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, yeah, that's I don't have too many thoughts on her character, honestly.
Okay. So let's get to Paul Atreides and Chani. First thoughts. I thought Timothy Chalamet stepped up his game
Oh, yeah.
from the first movie. Now the first movie makes him seem a little bit
Like a
like
fop?
no, I was gonna say like a boy who's timid to I mean, he's just timid.
Yeah.
That's ultimately it. And then this movie, he has to rise
Yeah,
and
he's gotta step
actually
up.
he's got to step up. And this, I think Timothy Chalamet kicked it out of the park with his performance on this movie.
Yeah.
Um, a lot harder than in the first movie. It was just done so well, especially the authority in that speech amongst
Mhm.
all the Fremen, which also that room was wild because
Yeah.
it was dark, but you could get a scope of how big it was
Mhm.
because these little beams of circular light going just in random spots, and you saw that little light of that little circular light on the
Yeah.
wide shot would reveal a whole little crowd, and so you saw how large this room was and how
Mhm.
many people were in there. But that speech as he's becoming uh, the the leader that so many of them want him to be
Mhm.
as he's stepping up and declaring himself this thing. So how did that was that satisfying to you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I with little exception, I think, his proof of, um, what is it?
Authority?
No, no, of, like, his clairvoyance,
Okay,
um, I think could have been proved a little bit more.
sure.
Um, I think, I would have liked to see him use the voice a little bit on
Mhm.
some people. Um, really just go to show that he is the absolute authority. I mean, I know why they did a lot of it is because the they're having him be a messiah.
Mhm.
right? Is people are blindly following him, even though
Right.
he is fulfilling all the prophecies. Uh, it's um, it's what the point of the book is,
Yeah.
which it's don't follow, um, don't blindly follow charismatic leaders.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see him go from non-charismatic, to when his mind expands, he all of a sudden finds this new gear
Hmm.
that he needed to actually go through with what's going on,
Oh,
right?
one of my favorite moments is in that part where he's talking to the crowd, and, Chani is against this,
Mhm.
right? She feels like she's losing him, and she sort of finds an ally in Gurney Halleck,
Right. Right.
right? As they're sitting there, and then Paul pulls out the ducal ring and puts it on, and she loses Gurney.
Yeah,
Loses him
Gurney's
completely.
gone.
Gurney stands up and he's
It's
like,
like,
the
yeah.
Lisan al-Gaib stuff doesn't resonate with me, but the Duke, my Duke,
Yeah.
Atreides,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
that did
that
it for
talks to
him.
my core, and then all of a
I
sudden,
love that.
Chani's on her own again.
Mhm.
That was a good. Yeah, Gurney Halleck's relationship with Paul is so interesting in this film,
Yeah.
so much more interesting than even in the first film. Um,
I want to touch on,
go for it.
some stuff that is really important to this movie, and that is the, number 1, and this will allow us to talk about, Rebecca Ferguson.
Okay.
So the water of life,
Okay.
she drinks it.
Right.
She transmutates it
Yep.
as a Bene Gesserit. She is taught to transmutate poisons. And is that not like one of the most wild scenes?
When she's sitting in front of the
No,
old.
no, no, no. When the concentrated, uh melange, washes over the fetus, and its eyes open.
Yeah.
That, John Mark was like, "That's my favorite scene in the whole movie." He
When
said, "That's"
yeah,
yeah, when Alia's eyes open,
and they expand the mind of this developing baby.
it's incredible. Now,
Yeah.
for those of you who haven't read the book, Alia is in the book. She's like 6 years old. That's how long they're in the desert.
Mhm.
And she's the one who, attacks the court, in Arakeen and kills the Baron.
Ollie is the one who does
Not
that.
in this movie.
Nope.
Not in this movie. Probably a good choice. It's a lot to try to explain.
And it's a lot to get through.
And it's a lot to get through is also the fact that she is essentially Ollie is a reverend mother,
Mhm.
um,
Okay.
from the time she's a fetus. Um,
Now, is that because of the expansion of the mind
that's yeah.
and her
So she can.
abilities from, uh, pre-birth?
So it's from uh the ingestion of the water of life,
Right.
and um and Jessica transmutating it, and basically so that they don't die.
Mhm.
Um yeah, so that is like a wild scene.
It is.
It's a
And
really wild scene.
the interesting thing for the setting of that scene is they kind of had it play out in, like, this weird hole, like, they're crouching
Mhm.
in a hole, and there's, like, this light
Yeah.
window above them, but they're, like, kind of that the place felt the setting of that scene felt eerie, just it almost felt like they were in a tomb, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I don't know why that specific creative choice was why they specifically chose that, but it
Yeah.
felt like she was going through this process while sitting in a tomb with these other ladies and this one that she's replacing, the Reverend Mother she's replacing.
Yeah.
And And did that what do you think about that aspect? Did that phase you? Did you even consider like the setting as to the creative choice there?
I thought it was I thought it was good, it was a little bit more,
Felt
uh,
claustrophobic.
pomp in the book. It's more of like this ceremony party
Right.
type thing.
That's how I would
Um,
envision it, but they didn't do it that way.
it is interesting that they do it in, like, a cave.
It's like a tiny cave. It's like they had to scrout they're crouching down, they're sitting down, and the roof is am I remembering this correctly?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The roof's, like, right
But
above their head.
tell me that compared to the first movie, Rebecca Ferguson's character, as, uh, um,
Jessica.
Jessica changes completely after that,
Yeah.
and it's incredible.
Just on a just 180. Completely different
She's
person.
incredible in this movie,
Yeah.
and
She's
she doesn't, like, necessarily do nearly as much,
Mhm.
um, like, she fought dudes, she helped fight in the
Mhm.
first movie, she kills a dude with a rock
Mhm. In the
in this
second,
one, in the beginning, but then after that, after her mind is expanded,
she's Reverend Mother,
dude, she becomes almost like a villain.
and it's, really
It's good.
well done. It that
Mhm.
that turn for her, and my goodness, the costumes. They got out of control with the
Yeah.
costumes in this, both for Princess Irulan and for,
Mhm.
Lady Jessica. They were nuts with
Yeah.
costumes in this film.
Yeah.
Um, but, so Jessica, I think do you think that was inside of her? Do you think they were tapping into she was tapping in when her mind expands, she's tapping into some kind of vicious nature she might have gotten from her Harkonnen genetics?
Could be. Um, yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
Because she became vicious, it felt
I don't know that
like,
that's what they're going for. I think she becomes for her, it is making, the Kwisatz Haderach.
yeah, and
Uh,
and getting Paul the opportunity to take his revenge for him and
right,
for her, you know?
right. Yeah, and the fact that she was right, you know?
Sh yeah,
Um,
she played the chess game very well.
and then so all of that, I also wanna talk about Paul's experience with the water of life.
Okay.
There is something so there's a very, very important line that we don't get in this movie, and it's one of my favorite lines in the whole book. Um, when he transmutates the water, he is opened up to the powers of the Bene Gesserit, which is a genetic sight. They can
Mhm.
see the memories of uh, the past Reverend Mothers, right?
Okay.
And past people in their lineage as well.
Right.
Um, they can see into the past. That is how the breeding program has worked so well, is because they have perfect recollection of everything.
Right.
Um, what Paul can do as the Kwisatz Haderach is see into the future,
Mhm.
um, and use the information of the past to help understand the visions of the future.
Right.
Um, and there's an interaction he has with the Reverend Mother where he says, "Look into that place you cannot go, right? You will see me
Mhm.
there. I am
Right.
there looking back at you."
Right.
That was a moment in my head visually that I wanted to see. I wanted to see we see it briefly. We see Paul briefly see the faces of the Reverend
Yep,
Mothers.
yep, yep.
I wanted a visual representation of the past place that they can go and the future place where they cannot because they're women. The
Right.
women can't see the future. It's a they see the past, men see the future.
Mhm.
Those are the powers basically.
Yeah. And when you expand your mind, it opened up Paul to the past.
Well, no, Paul, because Paul was trained as a Bene Gesserit by his mother.
And
Um,
he already accessed the past a little bit.
it would no. He wouldn't have. So if he had just ingested spice
Mm.
enough, he'd have
Yeah.
been able to have clear visions of the future,
Mhm.
right? Um, the point of the Kwisatz Haderach is to eventually subvert the Spacing Guild, and have no need for the Spacing Guild, people who can see the future, to travel through the stars.
Mhm.
Um, it's someone who can interpret the future. Um, and I think it's the being trained as a Bene Gesserit, being able to use the voice and then transmutating the water of life gives him access to the Bene Gesserit Reverend Mothers. So yeah, I visually wanted to see him actually accessing the future
Yeah,
and
yeah.
seeing the visions, which they didn't do. It's a little bit sad for me. They
Well,
didn't have
to be
that
honest,
line.
they've been that the line would be cool, but I will say that they've been doing that the whole time with his visions of potential futures, you might say.
Yeah,
Um,
but like, uh, the I think seeing nothing. So
mhm,
none of this is to say that it's a bad choice, because the choice they went with is, again, um, uh, close to like the what the writer wanted you to understand about the book,
sure.
and kind of the way that the Fremen see him is like, now he's sees the future. Now we really know he sees the future,
Mhm,
right? Even though
mhm.
we don't see him having the visions, we don't know exactly what he's seeing,
But we're about to see it,
right? But
you know
he
what I mean?
sees the I when he says that there's a narrow way through,
Yeah.
I was like, every time there's a line, every time there's a line from the book,
Fist pump.
yeah.
Nikita, I wouldn't be so quick to say no or not suited for you. We're getting in a little bit in the weeds here.
We
And
are. We're making it so we're making it sound deeper maybe than it necessarily is.
look,
This
this film is
actually
accessible for anybody in the audience. Like it is
this
not.
this second one, I would say, is more accessible to people than the first.
Yeah, the
The
first one was
first
dense with details and a lot of stuff a lot of hurdles you had to jump,
Mhm.
right?
And this one does is ask you as a viewer to enjoy the concept. Whereas the first one
Enjoy the
introduces
concept. That's
you
a good way
to
to
the
put it.
concept and is like, maybe try to understand the concept a little bit.
Yeah, like maybe do some research.
Maybe try to understand the concept, maybe watch it. The first one is definitely more dense and cerebral
Yeah.
than this one. Um,
Have you seen the first one, Nikita?
the f this one is more execution of the idea.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to swallow, a
Mhm.
much smaller pill, as far as brain power. You can
Yeah,
really kinda turn your brain off.
I'm going into a lot of the depths here of the powers of the Bene Gesserit and the
Yeah.
powers of Paul and all
But
that.
you're also
On
trying to fully understand, like, Paul's power and the motivations and
Right,
everything, whereas the movie says, "Allow that to remain a mystery, make it
right.
ethereal. You don't have to understand all
So, yeah,
this."
so watching the movie, you're just like,
Whoa.
"Okay, Jessica now sees something different,
Mhm,
and Paul now sees things completely different."
mhm, and it changes them.
And it changes things. You don't have to you don't have to understand any of the stuff I'm talking about. He's also a mentat. Not They never mention that in these movies, that
Right.
Paul, because he's a mentat, because he's a human supercomputer, he can calculate all the different possibilities the way that
Mhm.
no normal human could. They don't give him that ability in these movies.
Alright, so Nikita's seen it twice. She found the pacing very slow of the first movie, and she watches all kinds, even indies. Now, I will say it was slow. They were that movie
Mhm.
the first movie to me there was obviously a first, second, and third act of the first movie, but ultimately it felt like the first act or the setup, if you take these movies as a conjoined piece, you know, which is, in my opinion, which is why I think calling it part one and part two is more appropriate than calling it just one and two. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because you really need to capture these two films
Yeah.
together
Yeah. And trust me, like the pacing, I think you would enjoy the pacing of this one more.
a
I
lot
think
more.
you would enjoy the story of this one more. I do honestly feel like the first one is um it is concept stuff,
Yeah,
right? It's getting into the world and the lore. They're like, here's all these characters
a
and
lot of
things.
legwork.
Ethan, Ethan, somebody asked Ethan to um summarize Dune.
Mhm.
And he wrote an actually really great summary to this
Okay.
person. Whereas John Mark and I sat there and we were like, "Man, where do you even start? Arrakis, Dune,
Yeah, yeah,
desert planet." Just the
yeah.
way that the book starts, we're
Yeah.
like, you just start from the beginning. That's how you summarize it.
Wait, did Ethan write, like, a paper?
No, if somebody was like, "What is Dune about?"
And he summarized it
And
really nicely.
he summarized it in text really well.
Dang. Well, Ethan, he didn't read the books, did he?
Mhm.
He did? Well, then maybe he's got a
At least
gift.
Dune.
He's got a good gift to get people to understand what's going on.
He's
You're just
bad
not
at
giving it to him.
summarizing. He's
You're
the
not giving
worst
it to
at
him.
summarizing. He's never summarized a book that really made me wanna read it.
Alright, well,
He always gets too far in.
alright.
Uh,
So other big concepts,
there's
cinematography.
so much we haven't talked about.
Yeah, now I'll say this, we could end the live on Instagram, keep going on YouTube if you want.
I feel like we have to talk about the final battle.
Alright. Let's go ahead and say goodbye to the Instagram viewers.
Mm,
And if you guys want to join us over on YouTube, just go to
yeah.
Wiseworks Studio on YouTube and you'll see us live over there. So we'll see you later. Instagram, we're going to keep going live on YouTube. All right. So let's talk about the final battle.
So Paul gets his visions, gets everything set up. Oh, also, I know you were talking about Stilgar, being a little bit less maybe less serious than in the first one. I love Stilgar in this movie.
Yeah.
Uh, I love him. He's one of my favorite characters. It's just how hard he rides Paul as the
Hmm.
Lisan al-Gaib.
Yeah.
Just like I don't know if you if you haven't seen the memes yet, but it's just a picture of Stilgar like just have Paul farts and Stilgar's like the Lisan al-Gaib. The signs, he's the one.
Yeah, no, Stilgar was awesome in this. He definitely was 100%. He was the comedic
The true
relief
believer,
and the true believer. Yeah.
just and when everything starts confirming, right? Even when he says, "I wanna be called Muad'Dib," and he's like, "Get me that's a star, that's one of our like, constellations, that's the one that points the way."
Yeah,
It's like,
that's
this dude,
wisdom, right?
right? Um,
Everything he does is just
I
impressing this guy.
love it. I love Stilgar riding the worm into battle,
Yeah,
just fully
believing in the cause.
believing in the cause,
Yeah.
and then when Paul wins the fight at the end, he's the first one
I
who's
mean,
like,
Paul is
"Lisan
there with
al-Gaib."
he's freaking sitting there with a knife sticking out of him, right? And he's like, "Everybody cheer." You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah, he's
mean?
like,
"Come on, everybody. If we cheer,
the
he'll get better."
ultimate hype man.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I
No,
love him.
everyone needs a Stilgar in their life. Friggin'
Um,
what an awesome dude.
but that last fight at, like, that's I don't know, the Build-A-Bear castle that they build,
Oh, okay.
right? They just
Yeah.
construct this castle, this pyramid with
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
giant flaming ball ship over top of
Yeah.
it. That's awesome. The
Just
fact that it's on like, looks like it's just on fire,
mhm. That
that's
that the concepts now, this is Denis Villeneuve's greatest strength is
mhm,
concepting. Um, I think people's when it say what you will about Blade Runner, the concepts in Blade Runner are amazing. Like
yeah,
they're mind-blowing, and
and visually incredible.
almost all of Denis Villeneuve's films, his concept for the way things look, the way things react, the way things operate,
Mhm,
it's so outside of the box. And maybe
yeah,
there's that little bit of that French articism that comes into that, you know what I mean?
and I think so the final battle is quick.
Yeah.
It's not super quick, but it's pretty fast.
Well, there's a lot more story besides the battle they have to tell here.
So the battle, I think people were like, "Well, the Sardaukar were such a big threat in the first one." It's like,
Why
there's
is
now
Chani chopping through like 10 of them really easily?
there's now, like, millions of Fremen
Yeah.
attacking,
Mhm.
and giant sandworms and everything. Um, One of the greatest scenes, I think, to be put onto film in maybe the last 10 years is the sandworms. It's
Coming through the cloud.
the old concept art of the worms attacking,
Yeah.
to see it on screen, and especially on an IMAX screen, was awesome.
I
Uh,
have a I have a question. Um, Hey, you know what? Never mind. I'll save it for the comments later. But yeah, that was impactful,
mhm,
and it also is a good representation as to why the they probably won so well. Is
mhm.
they have the nuclear option. You know what I mean?
Right,
The nuclear option are these giant beings that um, are the biggest threat on the planet Arrakis for
right,
anybody.
and virtually indestructible.
Yeah, I mean, how would you kill
Very
one?
you
Drown it.
so that's John Mark. I don't know if John Mark explained his complaint to you, but,
Jamar's your
the,
brother for those
yes,
watching.
um,
Also a book reader.
the so you said the nuclear option referring to the worms. Paul uses the nuclear option,
Mhm.
uh, threatening to bomb the spice fields,
Yep.
which in theory would stop the spice flowing, which would stop the navigators from seeing their destination. Also, they don't tell you this in the movies, but everybody at court is addicted to spice.
Mhm.
Everybody.
And the
Everybody in the
film
high noble
opens with
courts.
to control the spices to control everything, right?
Right. Um, it wouldn't stop the production of spice. Spice comes from the worms,
Mhm.
and what Paul does in the book, which is the real nuclear option, is he knows how to kill the worms. He
Mm.
knows how to interrupt um, the worm life cycle,
Sure.
which is, I think it's when they're born. It's essentially you just drown them when as they pupate, right?
Yeah.
And when they pupate, they release spice melange out of their eggs and stuff.
Yes.
That's what spice fields are. It's when baby sandworms pupate and burst from their eggs. There's
Mhm.
explosions. Um,
Sand,
it's what originally
spice.
killed Liet Kynes in the book.
Okay.
Um, and Paul knows how to interrupt that life cycle and kill those babies and stop spice. And that's what he uses to hold over their head. They
Mm.
simplify it in this nukes. Nuke the
Just
spice fields.
nuclear. Now, are nuclear weapons in the book at all?
I don't think so. Well, there are, but they're not used this way. I don't think the Atreides arsenal is in the book.
Do you think it would have been too much to get into, like, if they would just decide, "Okay, I'm gonna stick with instead of saying we're gonna go to the Atreides arsenal, we're just going to stick with the original idea. Paul knows how to disrupt the life cycle of
Mhm.
and control the spice. Do you think that would have been too much extra to fit in for it to be worth it?
Yes, but there was scenes that you coulda cut out. Um,
I don't know how much I would go cutting from this film. I feel like
if
we could have
if
had an extra 2 hours.
so if you cut out that whole part where he takes them to the arsenal, there's a whole lead up to that scene that you wouldn't have needed, that you could have used to
That's true.
explain the life cycle stuff.
What well, let's see this. What would you have missed if we didn't have the Arsenal bit? More like the Gurney Halleck um relationship with Paul. Do you think that really
I don't think you
flourished?
would have missed much without that bit.
So that's a critique of yours then. You wish you would have
Yeah.
stuck to the book with that.
Yeah, but it's okay. It's easier for people to kinda get,
People
people to
understand
kinda
nuclear
understand.
weapons, sort of.
Yeah. Um, and, no, what did you think? Final battle, final.
I think it was exactly what it needed to be. I do, again, like I've said, this whole film felt summarized. The biggest
Mhm,
critique is that I wanted an extra hour. I would have taken an extra 2 hours. I wanted more because it was so amazing what I was getting.
mhm.
Um, and so I feel the same way about the battle. It was amazing. I wish there was more. You know what I mean?
It was there were parts that just even though so I think a lot of my problem is I was watching it from a perspective of somebody who's seen the books, and so
Read the
there were things
books,
where I was
seen the
like,
books.
"Seen the books, read the books." I see
Okay.
them in my dream my sleep in my sleep
You said
movies.
see the books, and I'm like, what? How do you
Um,
read these books?
the,
I
so even though
see
there were
the
parts that weren't in there, there were parts like when the Reverend Mother tries to speak to Paul and he just, like, yells at her,
Mhm,
just like, "Silence."
mhm.
I was like,
That's a powerful moment.
"That was good.
Yeah.
That was
Just like,
good." Yeah, yeah, she's
pretty
just
well
like,
done there.
"Abomination."
Nailed that one on the head. Crushed it.
Um, and then the fight with Fade.
Oh, yeah. The fight with Fade was so cool. The the choreography,
Mhm. Dude,
the
Fade
detailed choreography between, Timothy Chalamet and Austin Butler was elaborate and fast and very well done.
Fade just enjoying watching Paul beat all of these people,
Hey, kill his uncle.
kill his uncle, make the emperor kneel.
His Fade's face when the Baron gets stabbed in the neck, he's like,
Yeah,
you know, he was having a
it's
little excitement moment there.
it's, uh, all of his reactions to everything happening around him,
Mhm.
awesome. I love it.
Yeah,
He's an insane person.
that's what he is. Uh,
And,
do you think the opening of the film with the summarizing of what kind of just happened in the first movie, was that a waste of space, do you feel like? 'Cause it showed, like, them burning the Atreides stuff.
oh,
There's
nah,
the voiceover or it was
it's
Princess
okay.
Irulan documenting,
That's
um,
okay. Yeah, I feel like that's okay. I don't think that's necessarily.
if we're trying to save frames here,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah,
would say cut
to
that.
tell a couple other of the key portions that I would have liked to see, yeah, but, uh, it's all good. The movie is all good.
I wish they would have pushed it to 3 hours. Just add the extra freaking what is it, 15 minutes?
Yeah,
Just 15 minutes more. I'm an addict.
and, they have with the final fight with the final fight with Fade, they have, setup and payoff when he fights an Atreides in the ring.
What's up, Scottish geek guy? Keep
Howdy.
going. Keep
Um,
going.
he says he said, like, "Well done. You fought
Mhm,
well, Atreides." And he says
mhm.
it at the end. I know that's really simple writing, but it's good writing,
Yeah,
and
it is.
it's what I like. Unpopular opinion here, wasn't a fan of Dune 2. Okay.
You're gonna have to explain yourself because 'cause we've been talking about how much we love Dune for the past hour and 5 minutes. So, you're coming in, uh, talking some nonsense.
Hey, look, I'm lots of people like the movie, but I can absolutely see where it is not everybody's,
On Rotten
uh,
Tomatoes, where it
cup
says
of tea.
95%, that was him,
That
just
5%.
the only one over there giving it a
Um,
negative review.
no, I get it. I get it. It's maybe just not for everybody, but
How do you think I can understand if book lovers didn't vibe with it, okay?
mhm.
Especially after hearing all the different changes you've mentioned, but if you're not a book fan, how could you not like this movie? I guess, is my question.
Yeah, and as a book fan
You're good, dude.
who struggled with some of the changes, I still love this movie because
Mhm.
I love high concept sci-fi and good movies and good writing. They don't they're not trying to push any sort of modern politics on us or
Sure.
anything happening in our world. This is, um like I said, all it does is ask you to, um, what did I say? Enjoy
You
it?
yeah, you said it really well earlier, but you basically just said, like, sit and enjoy, essentially.
Right.
Let's see. So, Scottish Geek Guy says, "The visuals and score, 10 out of 10." That's Greg Fraser and Hans Zimmer.
Mhm.
Um, big my 2 heroes. I've not read the books. I just thought the pace was off, like, way too slow. Felt the same about the first one. The first one's definitely a lot more slow, and I felt like this one summarized a lot. That was my only critique. I
Yeah.
didn't feel like this was too slow. I mean, I love the first movie. I love this one more. So if I am okay with the pace of the first one,
Mhm.
obviously I'm okay with this, but
Yeah. Yeah, hey, that's understandable. It's definitely good for the industry, for critics to be enjoying it so much and for audiences to be enjoying it so much. It really says, "Hey, this is the kind of stuff people like,
mhm.
good acting, good story, good visuals." And I would say even if for people who maybe feel it's slow or aren't as invested in the story, um, this movie gives you great visuals,
Yeah.
gives you great music, like,
And
Scottish Geek
great
Guy is saying.
performances, my goodness.
I mean, if you can't enjoy the movie for anything but maybe those 3 reasons, um, that I think those reasons are almost good enough for to be able to enjoy the movie because we haven't had a lot of that
Mhm.
recently. Well,
Yeah, when have we
we
had
get
something
Oppenheimer, we get movies like
with
Oppenheimer every once
freaking
in a
it
while.
movies that blow us away? So, I was right out of the theater, I was blown away by the creator. Upon reflection, not as much, but right out of the movie theater, I was hyped for the creator and hyped for Oppenheimer. That was it last year.
Mhm.
That was freaking it. And
Yeah.
just to see that we're at the beginning of this year and we already have a banger. I don't know if we'll get any more. I'm crossing my fingers for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes,
Yeah,
but
and I don't know that Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is gonna do what this movie has. This movie
probably not.
also does a really great job of using its budget, which is a big budget. How did we
I'll
decide?
look it
Did
up.
we see how much it was? Using a big budget to, enhance every part of the visual effects.
Mhm.
I didn't watch the movie and ever feel like, um that's too much green screen or that's too
No,
much,
no, that's a
uh,
blasphemous to say you would ever say anything about that in this movie.
those are some bad, effects. You never watch the movie and feel like that.
Can you believe that it costs less than, like, the Marvels did?
What are we sitting at, 150 mil?
190. So
Okay.
it cost a $10 million less
So,
than the Marvels.
almost 200,000,000, but this is what a
Well
$200,000,000
spent.
movie.
This is what it feels like. This is what it looks like. This is how a $200 million film is supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
Um Got a fair amount of hate on my review for it, but you gotta be honest. Did you make a video or did you write something? I'm curious. If you wrote a video, I'd love to watch it. I'll check it
Hey,
out.
not here. I understand that there's movies that people just don't enjoy. It's part of life. There's movies that everybody loves that I don't care for. There's movies that I like that nobody likes.
Listen, the thing is, though, he is acknowledging it's a good film. And
Yeah.
then once we have a good film, then we're all on the same playing field and we can get in the nitty-gritty of things we didn't like or things we liked and we can have a wonderful debate. But
Mhm.
when we're talking about just freaking nonstop uh, poop movie after poop movie, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Then we don't have anything to debate. All we're doing is talking about, did you think it was trash? Yeah, I thought it was trash. Did you know what I mean?
This is what the movie should be about. It's about talking about a fun, entertaining experience with your friends and
Mhm.
family and going to do something and having a good time. Um, it's you shouldn't walk out of the theater. Look, sometimes you're gonna walk out of the theater like, "Blech," but you should never walk out of the theater feeling like you do after watching, like, what? Like, Madam Web or something.
Yeah, people weren't even going to the theater. They were freaking refunding their tickets before they showed up, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, this is the way movies honestly, I can't expect for movies like this to just be a all the time,
Mhm.
but the amount of money, the amount of available talent that a lot of Hollywood chooses to ignore
Mhm.
for agendas and messages and everything.
Mhm.
We should see a lot more of these. We should be
Yeah.
seeing like, honestly, if the next Netflix Narnia films that Greta Gerwig has been given to direct for some reason, if they are not on par with how much you enjoy Dune, then you're doing it wrong.
Well, I mean, people just came off of kind of a disappointing, Avatar: The Last Airbender
Yeah,
release, and, right into Dune, which is thankfully good, and also, I've only seen 2 episodes, but Shogun is pretty cool. Um, just a disappointing past couple years for movies
right.
with few exceptions, a few pretty good exceptions, but you're right, movies should be it should feel like one at least one in every, what, 10 movies or 15 movies should feel like this one, where
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
5 of those other 10 should be like, "Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed those," and then 3 of the remaining 5 should be like, "Okay, those were movies." Like 2 or 3 movies should
Right.
be just trash.
Yeah. Any thoughts that we haven't covered yet, as far as maybe things that didn't quite land for you or things that just landed too hard, you were overwhelmed? That was, my out of theater reaction. I posted a short on the channel, and
Mhm,
the only word I kept saying, I went with my friend Josh, not my brother, my friend. And I just kept telling him, he was laughing at me because I just kept being like, "I'm so overwhelmed." You know what I mean?
mhm,
I was I didn't know how to feel because I was just so blown away by the magnitude and the art and the
mhm.
performances and the emotion of all these twists and turns of this crazy film. And, eh, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say my only complaints are I didn't get to see as much of the, prescience, Paul's
Mhm.
prescience,
Okay.
that you get in the book, that interaction with the Reverend Mother, um, and yeah, and I guess kind of the decision to go with the nukes over
Right.
the breaking of the worms
Right, right.
cycle. I guess the only other thing, no mention of, Thufir Hawat. Um,
Did he die? We don't know what happened to
well,
Thufir.
in the book, he serves as the Harkonnens' mentat,
We
and they
didn't show
they
Thufir, though.
keep him poisoned and make him take an antidote so that he doesn't die, but they basically keep him drugged and poisoned and use him against the Fremen.
I wonder if they didn't renew that actor's contract, and so they just figured
Could be,
maybe not no more screen time for him.
could be. Yeah, so no mentats, no no spacing guild in this one. Paul confronts the spacing guild at the end of the book. So no
Okay.
spacing guild where he's like, "You guys need spice. I have it,
And I could take it away.
and I can take it away."
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was sort of a big thing in the book is nobody really knew how the
Mhm.
spacing guild did their stuff. Um, and then at the end, he makes them take out their contacts, and they have blue
Right,
eyes.
right.
Whereas I think in the first movie, they're like, the Spacing Guild uses spice to navigate.
Yes, yeah, they told you right off the bat
Right.
at the very beginning. Um, so at the way it ended with the close up on Shawnee, she's getting ready to run away out of frustration, you might say, out of protest. She's leaving. She's finding her sandworm and she's taking off. How did you feel about that ending? Because I thought it was relatively satisfying. With this type
Yeah.
of film, I don't know how to end it. So I
Yeah. So in the book, she stays with Paul. He marries Irulan only for her um, throne, basically.
mhm,
I don't think he consummates his marriage with her. And the only kids he has with Chani. And that's kinda how the book ends. I kinda like that he, like, gives her up.
mhm,
I think when he was seeing those visions of her dying, right?
protection.
I think he's doing all of this so that she survives.
That's a really good theory because
Mhm,
he genuinely cares, and he stressed the fact that
mhm.
as long as he's has breath to breathe, he will always love her. He said
Right,
it like 3 times,
yeah.
right? He was
And
motivating it.
if you know anything, if you've seen like Attack on Titan, where the main character has that ability to sort of um, see into the past, um, and hides things from himself and
Sure.
stuff. His ultimate goal is to make sure like that his friends survive. They kill him.
Mhm.
They have to
Mhm.
kill him. They fight against him and kill him. Um, but his goal is to make sure that they survive and that they are heroes at
Right.
the end, and nobody can question that they fought to save the world.
Mhm.
And it's a really great, heartwarming kind of idea, even though he does terrible things. I think that it's going to be a similar story here with Paul.
Yeah. I, um I don't know. I think there's hope if they get obviously in the same way they did with the first movie, there's no promise. They're not promising
Yeah,
anything
yeah,
about another movie.
but the first one made just enough for it to be like, okay, we can make a second movie.
Yeah. Well, this one's gonna make
This
enough to make a
one,
third, but they're
not
not
not but not
promising it.
just but not just money. We're talking about cultural impact here.
Yeah.
This movie has made enough waves already,
The
that
only
it's almost guaranteed a third movie.
well, the only thing is Denis Villeneuve is not he's not trying to capitalize on success. He's not trying
True.
to he's not trying to just pump out another Dune because people are vibing. He's already said he's interested in doing Dune Messiah. He's interested in making Dune Messiah a third movie. He will not be rushing the process, and he will
Mhm.
take time on the script, and he won't even ask for funding until he feels like the script is ready. So if we have to wait 3 years for another Dune movie, I would not be surprised. But
Yeah.
if we get it, heck yeah,
Mhm.
dude. If we
Yeah.
get it, heck
Yeah.
yeah.
Really wrap up. I think it would be a perfect sci-fi trilogy.
I think it might be the best sci-fi trilogy ever.
It's a Lord of the Rings level sci-fi trilogy that we
Yes.
need, that we need.
Now I'm unpopular opinion, not really. I don't think it's quite to the level of Lord of the Rings as far
Mhm.
as storytelling, but it's the best thing. It's truly one of the best multi-films that we've had since The Lord of the Rings, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think The Dark Knight was awesome,
Mhm.
but I don't think The Dark Knight, Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises as a trilogy is better than what
It's
we're seeing
also
coming down the
we're
line with
talking
Dune,
about
you know?
scale here. There's
Yeah.
nothing on this, like, scale.
Nothing.
Um, Scottish Geek Guy says, he did say he wanted to let Timothy age into the role a bit, so I
Yeah,
reckon at least 5 years, if not more. That's possible.
true.
I definitely feel like, um, throw a little bit of weight onto Timothy Chalamet.
Okay, here's the thing, there's
If
gonna
he
be a physical transformation.
not I'm
He's
not
gonna get a
I'm not
role.
talking about he doesn't need muscle necessarily, but just if he throws on some body weight with a little bit of muscle and fat and whatever he needs just to look a bit bigger and give him
It'll
just a
change the structure a
just a
little bit.
just a bit of a beard, kinda reminiscent of, Leto Atreides,
Then they could do it tomorrow, probably.
then yeah, then he would you don't need him to be super aged up,
But
just
he's
enough.
French. He's French. He probably
He can't
doesn't
grow
know
facial
how
hair.
no, he probably doesn't know how to gain weight. I don't think they're physically able to gain weight, the
He can.
French.
He can. He's an actor. They have coaches and stuff
I
for that.
I'm predicting in the next year or so, we're gonna see Timothy do a role
Mm,
he's gonna do a physical transformation. He's gonna get mildly ripped. He's gonna do the Zac Efron thing. You know what I
mhm.
mean? He'll get mildly ripped for a role, and then he'll realize this is kind of fun. I'm getting a lot of positive attention. And he'll probably go a little harder. And then he's
Mhm.
gonna have the body of a god for a little bit. And then he might start doing plastic surgery. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. We'll see. Um, we wanna thank everybody for watching. We've been going for a while, so I
Oh
feel like it's
yeah.
kinda time to wrap it up. There's so much more we could say about
Yeah.
Dune Part 2. We've been if you've been following the channel, we have been waiting for so long since
Waiting.
Part 1.
And before we go, just want to let's see. So this is the Scottish guys,
Scottish
Scottish
Geek
Geek
Guy.
guy,
Yeah.
his unpopular opinion movie review. If you guys want to go check him out, he took time to come into the chat, interact with us. So just want to point you over there. Go see what he
Mhm.
had to say. I know I will be seeing what he had to say that was negative about the film. And with that, we love you guys. We have a podcast coming out on Friday where we're talking about directors and why Hollywood cannot has the inability to make movies like Dune. And we have a pretty good theory as to how they can fix the industry in the episode. So, if you want to check that out on Fridays at noon Eastern Time, it streams live on this channel. We love you, and we hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening. We'll see you next time.